Hello, BookTube. I thought we'd do a tiny bit of mail still to keep our hand in, even though it's a Sunday. I have a book that was opened that might be of interest to you, and I have a box that I have not opened. So we'll see what's in that together. And if I end up ranting for 50 minutes, if it turns out to be unwatchable, then I don't have to upload it. So the thing I opened is a novel. I believe a debut novel. Is that right? Well, we'll find out together. This is by Ross Barkan, and it is a novel called Glass Century, which comes out in early May. Glass Century. The Twin Towers there on the cover. Okay, so we have blurbs on the back. Only blurbs on the back. Let's read the opening here. This comes out on the first Tuesday of May. As both a hardcover and a paperback, depending on what you want. So, what have we got here? From the celebrated author and journalist. So this is not a debut. It's 1973, and Mona Glass is a 24-year-old amateur tennis star in a long-running affair with Saul Plotz, her former college professor. Her parents like Saul and desperately want the free-spirited Mona to marry. But 34-year-old Saul already has a wife and 2 children. Saul happens upon an idea, stage a fake wedding, and go about their lives. The ruse works. Except Saul realizes he actually wants to marry Mona, who vows never to permanently tie herself to a man. As a freelance photographer for a radical new tabloid, she beats a competition to capture a photo of a murderous vigilante taking the city by storm. The years pass, the affair never quite dies, and Mona realizes she is pregnant with Saul's child. Meanwhile, Saul's adult son, Tad, is aimlessly traveling across America hunting for answers as the 1990s bleed into 9/11. In the shadow of terrorism and war, Mona and Saul raise their son together, keeping him secret from Saul's wife and a prying Tad, now following the very path of the vigilante Mona once chased. Spanning from the 1970s to the pandemic, this soaring, heartbreaking novel is a tour de force of ambition and grace, a great American chronicle that marks the emergence of a major new talent. Okay, but you said he was a celebrated author. He's not a new talent, is he? Ross Barkan is the author of 2 novels, including Demolition Night and a work of nonfiction. The contributing writer to the New York Times Magazine, and his reporting and essays have appeared in The Nation, New York Magazine, The Guardian, and elsewhere. Okay, so he is not a major new talent. He's an old talent. So in keeping with the new tradition of this channel, let's read the beginning of this. See if we can find a convenient beginning. All right, let's read the first bit, the first note of the first chapter of Glass Century, and see what we make of it. Here was Mona Glass. That is the first sentence. Down the hallway and out of the dark, she was running because she always ran, her legs wired with muscle, her elbows firing with polished violence. Even though this was the night before what was supposed to be the most important day, she was wearing frayed Pumas, I think that's a kind of shoe, the same that glided across tennis courts and gym floors, one lace licking the beige carpeting. She ran because she could, because she was still 24, and if she was going to be late, she couldn't blame the speed she was gathering. Flustered waitstaff looked on, a man with a miniature mustache and a woman in dark red, their eyes pulled from the Rudolph Lodge script against the wall to the woman dashing past them, her head shooting forward deer-like. A cart of thick plates and dining forks trembled. Wash rags tumbled down. There were gasps as they were lost to her, soft against her crashing footsteps. Suddenly she was suspended in the air. A stumble sent her outward, but she caught herself on the edge of the carpet, her calves flexing in the denim she had decided at the last minute to wear. Right, left, right, she had a notion of where she needed to go. One more swerve and she'd be in the ballroom. Okay, so Mona running. That is the beginning of this book, which gradually I think we can see takes place in a restaurant. She's running through a restaurant. Okay, so I think it's safe to assume that no matter what kind of reader you are, if you open a novel to a character running, you are going to read at least to their destination. So very interesting, very effective on a visceral level. So that is our first thing, Glass Century by Ross Barkan, which comes out in May. And now we'll do the box, which I wasn't expecting. This is a normal pattern that a lot of you have noticed on this channel, where Saturday's mail delivery is done by a person who is new to the route. They make up their own rules, and they often get to me late. So late that the book gets to me Saturday night, and I don't see it until Sunday morning. So what is the book? Oh, fantastic. Okay, we've already seen this. And I have already been living with this book. Now I have the finished copy with an index and everything. Great. This comes out at the end of March. This is the 2nd of March. This comes out on the 28th of March. And is going to be a $38 hardcover. This is Inventing the Renaissance by Ada Palmer, the science fiction author. Nice big hefty orange thing here with the statue of Perseus there, cutting off the head of Medusa. So what have we got here? This is called An Irreverent New Take on the Renaissance. From the darkness of a plagued and war-torn Middle Ages, the Renaissance, we're told, heralds the dawning of a new world, a halcyon age of art, prosperity, and rebirth. Hogwash, or so says award-winning novelist and historian Ada Palmer. In this book, she turns her witty and irreverent eye on the fantasies we've told ourselves about Europe's not-so-golden age, myths she sets right with sharp clarity. Her Renaissance is altogether different, or altogether desperate. Troubled by centuries of conflict, she argues, Europe looked up to the long-lost Roman Empire, even its education practices, to save them from unending war. Later historians met their own political challenges with a similarly nostalgic vision, only now they look to the Renaissance and told a partial story. To right this wrong, the author offers 15 provocative portraits of Renaissance men and women, some famous, some obscure, whose lives reveal a far more diverse, fragile, and wild Renaissance than its glowing reputation suggests. Okay, so that sounds, I think I mentioned this when we read about the advanced copy, that description sounds like it's dealing with a lot of straw men. I noticed this was years and years ago. There was a new release. I don't remember if we saw it on this channel. I think it was called The Ugly Renaissance, where the whole thing was premised on a straw man. It ended up being a fairly interesting book in some ways, but I'd rather that you just, go about your business rather than telling me that I believe something that I didn't. But that's just the pub sheet. And the book is doing different things than that. The book is really good. It's argument starting, but it's really good. Let's read the beginning. Since we can now do that, let's read the beginning. There is the Medici family tree as a beginning. There are look at that. How's that for an infographic? Those are the connections between the various major families of Italy and the major city-states of the time. All right, let's read. Should we read the beginning of the prologue or the beginning of chapter 1? Well, let's start at chapter 1. Prologues can be iffy. One mistake many introductions to Machiavelli, and I can tell you Machiavelli is all through this book. He is the major character. One mistake many introductions to Machiavelli make is starting by talking about Machiavelli. Instead, let's start with SPQR, Senatus Populusque Romanus, the Senate and the people of Rome. Many know this motto, found on ancient inscriptions, modern storm drains, grand coats of arms, and sun-bleached baseball caps, a symbol of pride in the continuity of the Roman people and their republican heart. Because Senatus Populusque et Romanus is an inscription that the Romans put on buildings saying that it was erected by the people and the Senate of Rome. Textbooks place the Roman Republic's end in 27 BCE, that would be BC, when Augustus became emperor. But the Roman Senate and other offices of the Republic continued to exist. The Senate continued under the Caesars. It continued when the Caesars moved east to Constantinople and needed experienced senatorial families to administer the Western Empire. It continued past 410 and 434 CE, that's Common Era, otherwise known as AD 410 and 434, when the Goths replaced the Western emperors and were delighted to find local administrators experienced in governing the region whose needs and customs were alien to its new conquerors. Even after the 600s, when the Roman Senate winked out for a while, Rome's old, powerful families were hailed as senators and heeded by the people. Okay, so that's the first page. The paragraph goes on for quite some time. But that's the first page, and you're wondering what any of that has to do with Machiavelli. And I think you're meant to wonder that. But that first sentence, one mistake many introductions to Machiavelli make is starting by talking about Machiavelli, also leads to a footnote at the bottom of the page. If you're looking for the giant scholarly footnote listing 50 books on Machiavelli, this isn't that kind of book. So that's a footnote on page 1. In the coming chapters, as appropriate in a public-facing history, endnotes will credit individual scholars at the moment I draw on each, and will recommend further reading on each topic, giving preference to books in print, books easily accessible via e-book edition and modest cover prices, and books with the kind of approachable prose one might read for pleasure. Comprehensive reviews of scholarship can be found in the sources I cite. Okay, well, I can now answer a question. Okay, there is, it's called Sources and Recommended Reading. That's not quite a bibliography, but it's close enough. So that's fairly interesting. That footnote says a lot more about the book than the opening paragraph does, right? Especially that bit about public-facing history. All published books, aren't they public-facing? This author is clearly thinking otherwise. This author is clearly thinking closer to what I think, which is that some history, most history, I would say most professionally written history, academically written history, is so recondite that it might as well be in ancient Sumerian. It's not for the general reading public. This author is coming right out and saying this is not that kind of book. I don't know. I think a lot of readers will find that inviting if they read footnotes. So there you go. We have a work of history and a work of fiction. Inventing the Renaissance and Glass Century. So that is our Sunday mail, unexpected Sunday mail. Two very Inventing the Renaissance. I will read this finished copy probably this week because I don't have all that much time to write about it. But reading the galley copy got me thinking. I lived with that galley copy for a while, and that doesn't usually happen even with works of history. So I might have more to say on the subject. And then Glass Century, well, it depends on how interesting I find Mona all throughout the book. But anyway, that's the mail. We'll get back to a little more mail tomorrow, so I'm going to keep it to a couple of books at a time. We can avoid ranting, I think. But I'll wrap this up for now, and I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.